I actually don't want to show you more disgusting barbecue sauce. I want to show you this. 2 satellite images of 2 barbecue institutions, Snow's Barbecue in Lexington, Texas, and Lem's in Chicago, Illinois. Do you see the difference? This is Snow's wood storage, which makes sense because Lexington, Texas has a lot of open space. Now look at Lem's and you won't find it. But go to Street View. There we go. Lem's smokes their barbecue inside in a classic Chicago aquarium smoker. You can see the top of it here. The aquarium smoker is an unusual, mostly Chicago institution. Food here would usually in here, stainless steel over bricks and glass to keep the smoke in, and it makes perfect sense for a cold, dense city. And these 2 images, they are just a small example of how geography affects United States barbecue. But the story is national, and when you understand those influences, you finally understand the United States of barbecue. I want to explain in 3 parts how 3 geographical factors have affected American barbecue, including the best style of barbecue.
Did you really think I was just going to come out and say it at 1:30? Come on.
This topic is best served by narrowing it down a little bit. So when we say barbecue, we're talking about big cooks, not grilling in the backyard. Big difference there. We're talking about the suspension of meat over heat for a long period of time. And yes, it's possible to go back to images like this one from 1590, European depictions of American cooking, fish, fire, barbecue. This image is actually a bit of myth making, but it does depict how barbecue was thought of as an indigenous American form of cooking compared to traditional European forms. A book called Black Smoke, one of you recommended it to me. I got to read it, and it points out that there are connections to African cooking methods as well, which enslaved people would have brought to US cooking. So this kind of explains why it's thought of as an American art form. But Robert Moss's barbecue book kind of shaped how I look at this, and I wanted to narrow it to the 20th century. He kind of makes this point that for a lot of American barbecue history, barbecue was just synonymous with cooking a ton of meat, like at this barbecue and ox roast in 1904. Think less a style of cuisine and more like a giant roast over hot coals, like this Shriner's barbecue, or this 1921 barbecue, which sounds like an awesome time. Leave your troubles at home, forget your sorrow. How do I get invited to a barbecue like this? John Wharton will give a $1.50 necktie to the fastest fat man on foot, over 200 pounds. All you have to do to get that necktie is give up your dignity. Bliss Hair will give a pound of canned coffee to the fattest woman. What a deal. But around the 1920s, this graph is kind of imprecise, but I think it's useful. You start to see the barbecue restaurants and roadside stands really take off. And I think this is when you really start to see some of that cuisine differentiation that affects how we think of barbecue styles today. For that reason, the Department of Agriculture yearbooks from the 1920s helped me unlock the way that some of these regional differentiations happened. One of North Carolina's earliest sit-down restaurants, Bob Melton's Barbecue, was founded in the 1920s. From the beginning, it was defined by the juicy pig, which continues to define Carolina barbecue today. Look at Ayden, North Carolina, where you'll find Skylight Inn. Their menu still features whole hog prominently today. You can see why on this 1923 map of world hog production. Pork is just more common in North Carolina rather than Texas. Now, let's not overstate it. You can see on this 1920 map that Texas had hogs too, and indeed in eastern Texas, pork barbecue is more common. But North Carolina had a denser pork population, and because of the timing of colonization, they set culinary traditions earlier than in the West. The point is, people were cooking pork in colonial times. They started setting down these traditions, and that carried through to when, like Bob Melton, opened his restaurant. This map's even more helpful. It shows how many hogs were slaughtered for farmers' own use. It's like a map of pork eaters, and that was concentrated in those eastern pork barbecue states as barbecue took off. This is in obvious contrast to Texas. Here, the darker areas represent more beef cattle farms. Compare North Carolina and Texas, and you can really see the difference. This shift happened early too. While cattle density moved north by 1920, Texas remained covered with beef cattle. This bias was reflected early on in Lockhart, Texas, today often called Texas's barbecue capital. In 1930, beef barbecue there was cheaper than pork. By 1960, the cooking and selling of barbecue was clear. Kreitz Market in Lockhart was known for barbecued beef and barbecued sausages, not known for the pulled or chopped pork that you would find in the Carolinas. So with these pork and beef regions kind of established, the central United States adopted both as a kind of crossroads. This map shows major railway shipments for cattle and calves, and you can see that Missouri and Illinois had emerged as hubs for shipments by 1920, and Kansas City was a really prominent cattle market. This map shows the Kansas City stockyards as they were, a massive commercial hub that brought beef from around the country to Kansas City, but I've essentially given you a meat map of different barbecue regions in the United States, and the styles are more distinct than that. So what else caused that barbecue differentiation to happen? The meat is just the beginning of the story. Check out Snow's Barbecue compared to the Red Bridges Barbecue Lodge in North Carolina. Red Bridges, they just list barbecue, but it's pork. The difference is one that you can't really see from above. Red Bridges uses hickory to smoke its meat, while Snow's uses post oak. You'll find post oak in this range, and thus it is commonly used in Texas-style barbecue. That's the reason, for example, that Lewis Barbecue in Charleston, South Carolina, makes the effort to use post oak wood. They are a Texas-style joint. Hickory and pecan is less common in Texas. You will find mesquite smoking in Texas too, which works really well with that Texas beef flavor. I actually found an interesting article in which they're kind of grappling with this evolution of the wood that is being used to smoke the meats. In 1942 in Abilene, a place called the Hickory Grill opened to provide authentic barbecue. But they couldn't get hickory during World War II, so they pivoted to mesquite and oak wood. By the 1950s, Texans flew in mesquite wood around the country for Texas-style barbecue. There are other quirks. In Mississippi, you're most likely to find pecan. And this plant differentiation extends to sides as well. People argue that North Carolina's predilection for slaw comes from available cabbage acreage, and this cabbage acreage map supports it as a theory. But obviously the sauce, or lack of sauce, is the big deal here. In the Carolinas, you had vinegar-based sauces, which makes sense considering the agriculture of the region and the methods of meat preservation that were being used in that time in history. As you got to central North Carolina, where tomatoes are more common, you'll find more tomato-based sauces. In Texas, you are likely to find a preference for rubs over sauce, which makes sense considering the agricultural resources in the area. While in Kansas City, a thick, sugary-infused tomato sauce is perfect for a Midwestern hub that draws from sugar cane-producing areas. In the 1950s, you started to see a new genericized idea of barbecue sauce emerge, one that was tomato-based. Like these Oscar Mayer wieners, with an included Sacco sauce. Let's just go to the next section after that. You might have noticed that sauce section was short, and that's not just because of the Sacco sauce. It's because people affected this sauce as much as agriculture. And that's especially true of the Kansas City style sauce that is super common at barbecue joints around the country. Let's get specific. It has a heritage going back to Kansas City barbecue's most famous hero, Henry Perry, one of a few barbecue kings. After moving to the city from further south, as early as 1915, he was making ads saying that he was endowed with the gift to cook meat. It's hard to overemphasize his influence. He really brought barbecue to Kansas City, and big names like Arthur Bryant learned from him. Today, Arthur Bryant's is still an iconic example of KC barbecue with a mix of pork and beef, burnt ends, and thick sauce. This is making me feel like some sort of barbecue stalker through this fence. Now, to be clear, Henry Perry, the specific person, he was a dynamo who affected this Kansas City barbecue scene. Arthur Bryant said he started out with a hole in the ground and then a streetcar. The guy was one of a kind. But he was also part of a bigger historical movement, a Great Migration. This map's from a little bit later, 1940 to 1960, but it's still illustrative. The blue areas show places where the black population declined. People moved out. And the red areas show places where the black population increased. The cities like Memphis, but also Chicago, and right here, Kansas City. Black Americans were often the ones making barbecue in the American South, and they came from sugar production states where molasses was incorporated into a lot of cooking and sauces. You can see how sugar production was concentrated in those states. And in 1920, the Department of Agriculture was even freaking out about migration from the southern farm to the northern factory. Even East Texas's cotton boom in the 1850s may have induced forced migration of enslaved blacks to the area, and they likely brought barbecue with them. So you can really convincingly argue that barbecue history is tied to the history of slavery and then to the history of migration that occurred during the Great Migration. It didn't hurt that people like Arthur Bryant said that Henry Perry's sauce was too spicy, and he started making stuff that was more palatable for the general public. And all that led to sauce that looks like this. Other less well-known migratory flows affected barbecue styles too. That vinegar sauce in the Carolinas, it is not just a byproduct of agriculture, but also timing, because that method of preservation and seasoning of meats was popular in the 1700s and 1800s. Though there are skeptics, a lot of people posit that South Carolina's barbecue sauce, mustardy Carolina Gold, was influenced by German immigration to the region. And Central Texas clearly has a German influence. At Kreitz Market, that one in Lockhart, Texas, sauce is scorned, but you'll find sausage on the menu, probably because of that German influence. That migratory influence, it continues today. In South Texas, you're really getting a fusion of Texan and Mexican barbecue styles with the ubiquity of barbacoa. Hawaiian barbecue draws from local influences. The West Coast features a large amount of Korean barbecue due to immigration there. This map, it truly requires all three elements: meat, plants, and people, to build the distinct styles that we know today. Initially, when I conceived of this video, I thought we should think of barbecue like wine, where the geographical resources of a region greatly affect the taste. Then I realized that was kind of silly for a few different reasons. First, there were mysteries that I simply could not solve. People said that Kentucky's unique barbecued mutton emerged due to its wool industry. But when I went to the Department of Agriculture stats from the time, I found mutton elsewhere. Here's a map of sheep on farms. They were in lots of places. And I found barbecue mutton all over the country at the time, including in Texas. For some reason, it just stuck in Kentucky, and none of the theories really convinced me. The same goes for Alabama white sauce, the mayo-based barbecue condiment that, as far as I can tell, came straight from Big Bob Gibson's brain. That said, I wasn't wrong with my wine analogy. I was just missing people in addition to the food. I'm left with a somewhat banal point that will change how I eat barbecue, whether it's in North Carolina or in Texas, where they make the best barbecue.
I'm sick of hiding who I am.
Barbecue is the quintessentially American food because it is a melting pot of stockyards and cabbage maps and migration and parties. Or if not a melting pot, then maybe an aquarium. All right, that is it for this video. Thank you for watching. I'm obviously looking forward to your favorite styles of barbecue and your, defenses of them. Let me know if you think there's any other kind of fun stuff like this that would be interesting to get a map style story about. What other things have been influenced by geography? It's easiest for me to research stuff that is in the United States of America, but I'm down to learn about anything. I love learning how the geography really affects these styles and interacts with the cultural flows of people. Like I mentioned at the top, that Robert Moss book was probably the most influential. I also checked out Black Smoke, Savage Barbecue, and a bunch of individual different articles and those Department of Agriculture reports that I showed quite a lot. I will link all those in the description. There will be a reaction video to this one up on Patreon. That's a way for you to support this channel and the kind of research that I do. And you also get to see commentary where I tell you what I left out of the video, all the other stuff that couldn't make it into the video proper. Thanks for watching. All right.